Hello all, Nice Tail here, taking a look at another knife in my collection and doing a review of it. This is the Kansept Kratos. And there's a lot to love here. There is one substantial issue that could probably be a problem for a lot of people. But before that, let us get to specs. Blade length is 3 3/4. This is very much approaching a large knife, but I'm not going to call it quite like a large knife. It really doesn't feel it. 8 inches and I'm going to call that 8.7 inches on overall. And the handle length is 4 inches and 4.9. So yeah, 3.75-ish, 4.9, and 8.7. Do some quick comparisons to the Civivi Elementum and the Civivi Conspirator for the small and full-size comparative knives. Yeah, it's bigger than both. Considerably so. No doubt about that. It's a larger knife, but I wouldn't say it gets into the realm of large knife. It's still in that full size for me. I guess some people would consider a 3.75 inch, 3 3/4 inch blade large, but it just doesn't feel it. Not to me. Though, compared to the AA batteries down here for some reason, you can see it is a bit bigger than maybe some others that we've compared. Weight. Now, there are numerous inlay materials, so the weight will vary. This is actually really nice Damascus. Tight grain Damascus. Very attractive, in my opinion. It's what got me to buy it. 5.26 ounces. It's not a lightweight knife. It is... oh, there is some milling out for weight reduction, but not... well, no, there's a pretty decent amount in there. It's not skeletonized quite as far as it could be, but... I mean, you're dealing with a larger knife. You kind of gotta deal with the weight. That is not a T8. That's a T8. And it's only these two screws. Though, of course, Kansept being Kansept, they like their non-captive pivots. Now, one thing I want to say, while I'm trying to figure out what exactly size this thing is, that's a T15. That is not going to do it. While they like their non-captive pivots, I've not actually... it's a T10. I've not actually had too much issue taking apart Kansept knives. I've taken apart this knife and had no issue with it. I mean, I have decent tools, I have 2 drivers, but it was pretty darn easy. I've also taken apart a few other Kansepts. In fact, I have a review of one that I took apart that had a non-captive pivot that was absolutely no problem whatsoever. It's unscrewed, but the other side didn't move. So maybe there is some captive element, but it doesn't seem to be. It just, they do it decently. I wish they didn't do it at all, but eh. The final spec to take a look at is to bring out the calipers and check the dimensions of this knife. Don't do this. I have the blade sitting on my hand, but I'm being very careful. 540 thousandths, so little over half an inch. Blade stock at its thickest. 155, 57 thousandths. Not the thinnest blade stock. Behind the edge. On the Kratos. 17 thousandths? Does it change up here? Because we've got the dual ground. I guess this is technically a dual ground Tonto, isn't it? Even though it doesn't look it. It might be a tiny bit thicker up in the front here. So it might widen out as you go up. Taper. And yeah, I guess that would be a Tanto. You've got a leading edge split by that, and you've also got a compound grind there. It's just a way back in the back Tanto. Alright, what are we looking at? We're looking at S35 VN blade steel, which I like. S30V, S35, S45, they're good blade steels. They're mid-grade blade steels. They're not top of the line. But honestly, most companies are going to heat treat these a lot better, and probably having them perform similarly to their M390. Maybe a little bit less blade retention, but they're also probably going to be tougher. So I'm okay with that. We've got a titanium handle, which is sort of simple yet elegant, and with the whole line's flow, and it's got a very nice, attractive sort of flow to it, honestly. Just little dips, little flares. Yeah, I like it. With the handle's titanium, and we've got on this one Damascus inlays. There are a lot of different inlays, as I said. Carbon fiber, variants, micarta. In fact, there's another Damascus, I think. This is an O-stop hell design, right there. And Kratos. As usual, I don't like Kansept's branding. I don't like seeing the code for the knife. I don't like seeing the name of the knife. I kind of wish this was just O-stop hell's logo. This doesn't bother me as much. I don't like seeing that, but they've kept it very minimal here. It's very small and off to the side, so I'm not going to knock them too much. It's clearly that most of the blade is the star of the show. This is a flipper-only knife on bearings, and as you can see, ridiculously smooth and controlled. This is how it came out of box. And it stayed that way. We're centered, and the only other thing you have to interact with is that big old gigantic standoff that also makes for the only thing holding this knife together. You have a lanyard pin, which is hidden, which is perfectly fine. It's not contoured, but with this Damascus inlay sitting slightly proud and being as rounded as it is, it feels very close to contoured. Got a big design clip that works wonderfully. My word, this thing, it has great flex. It's just a continuous rise. It's, I mean, maybe you could shorten it up a little bit so it's just a little bit more up and there's not a little bit at the end. But overall, this works really, really well. And it's on the slick Damascus, and yeah. This is a good clip. It's there, but it's super comfortable, right? It's not really doing anything for me. Right? It's not bothering me. It's just kind of flat. It tapers off and chamfers at the edges, so even though it's wider there, it's not uncomfortable. It's just well done. The whole thing is consistently and well thought out in its design language and function. You've also got an interesting double cutout for the lock bar. You got a cutout on the inside and a little bit of a cutout on the outside. I haven't seen, and this one's so smooth and transitions so nicely that it hasn't caused any problems for me. Got jimping that is a bit too soft. It's the right kind of jimping, maybe a little finer even, but it just provides a little bit of traction. The stop pin is attached to the blade. You can see it right there. So you can get in and do whatever you want to this choil, which is good because the plunge grind unfortunately does hit the edge, or come to the edge. Now, I don't know how I feel about that one because, well, I mean, I don't like it. But if you look at this knife, you got the same dropping plunge up there. So it It actually is kind of like aesthetic. You get it in both. Come on. What is this doing? Sorry about that. You get a slope on both sides, like, evenly. And weirdly enough, it kind of just adds to the aesthetic. So, I don't want to see it, I don't like it, but I don't know why. It doesn't bother me quite as much on this, just because it sort of fits with the flow, and that's what everything does on this knife. This knife is still reasonably sharp, not terribly so, but not necessarily in need of a sharpening. It's on bearings, I'd probably mention that, or if you hadn't figured that out, yeah. Lock bar access is excellent. You have a big old cutout that you can easily get. Though I will say, despite all the access, I still find myself coming in from this kind of a slant instead of purely from the side, just because of the way this is chamfered. The contact is better there. So in the beginning of this video, I mentioned something a little bit wonky here, and that is the detent. The detent on this knife is extremely light. I partially think it has to do with how low in relation to the pivot that flipper tab is, and the fact that so much of the flipper tab is like hidden down inside the frame. Like you're contacting here, but you have all this extra jimping. It's clear that what they really want you to do is to actually do that and light switch this thing. No doubt about that. That's what it's designed to be, and it works. But I'm, of course, as is everybody else, not necessarily always going to do that or always going to come into that contact very quickly and easily. The push button works, but it's definitely unsatisfying. It has a very light detent. In fact, I can probably... Oh, no. It won't shake out. Interesting. I know I had it shake out once before, but I guess it's settled in over time. Oh, no, there we go. It's just under the camera. I just had it do it. You can do it with a bit of extra force. Let's see. Can I get it? Yeah, there we go. It takes a little more force than it used to, but it definitely will slip out. It's just the detent is not crisp. It is mushy. And weak. Again, though, I mean, clearly the intent was to do this and light switch it, which works fine. Now, this was one of the first Kratos. There has been since numerous other variants, and they've been out for a while. They may have fixed this issue. I cannot say. Honestly, I'd love to get one of the newer ones, just a more plain one, in hand just to see how it compares. If they've upgraded it a little bit or improved a little bit. But it's not on the top of my list for what I want to spend my money on, considering I already have the version I want. But maybe someday I'll get one in hand and see if the detent has improved over time, because these have been around for several years now. The final thing I want to mention is price. This is priced really reasonably. Not this variant, but the standard knife for this knife in, say, carbon fiber or micarta. There's a copper inlay. There's multiple carbon fiber inlays. They're priced around $238, which really is quite good. In fact, I think there's one down as low as 224, 225 with G10 inlays. There are also variants that use Kansept's Damascus, which I believe is like a 10ZR Damascus. It's a good Damascus. It works. I mean, you're not going to get the same levels of performance as the S35, but it is a good Damascus. They're in the 260 range. They're not that expensive either. And of course, when you get into the variants with the Damascus on them, not the Damascus, the Damascus, you get into around 350. So you're adding about $100 there, but you're also getting two giant plates of Damascus, and that is inevitably going to add to the price. So the base model of this thing is very, very well priced. And it's just an attractive, good-looking knife. It definitely does invoke for me somewhat of the, a little bit of a Greek aesthetic. Not like a gladius or any sort of one of those, but the name is fitting. It definitely feels right. And I really like this knife. It's really well done in every other way other than that detent. So, reasonably priced, good materials, good execution. Yeah, my review is positive. This is definitely a recommendable knife. But again, you have to be aware that you may have not the strongest detent. If you're okay with that, it's a recommendable knife. It still works if you do it the way it's designed. It's a shame that it's not a little bit more poppy, but what are you gonna do? That's all from me. Thanks for watching.